All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to be finishing our look at the Dark Knight subclasses by delving into the Dark Magus. Now, as a quick reminder, trying something a little bit different. If you are enjoying this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon to turn notifications on. All of these things help the video get seen by other people. So please do that. Now, if you're going Dark Knight, I don't know a Dark Knight. That wasn't in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Well, that's because we are taking this from a homebrew collection called the 5th edition D&D Cross Final Fantasy XIV Classes and Races Compendium. It is this brilliant homebrew thing. In the description, there is a link to the subreddit where you can download your own copy of it. You can talk to other people there. I've been posting all these videos there. The people there have been wonderful and very, very welcoming. Yeah, overall, pick it up. It's super cool. It doesn't cost anything, so pick it up and check it out. Yeah, so let's dive into the Dark Magus. Now, a quick refresher on 5th edition class design. In 5th edition D&D, every class is designed to play very, very differently right from the beginning. And the way that they do that is they have these things called defining features. A defining feature is basically something either unique to the class itself or something that the class specializes or is able to use in a unique way. It may not be a unique ability to that specific class, but they get to use it in different ways or rely on it in different ways than any other class. And in order for something to be a defining feature, it has to show up within the first 2 levels. So for the Dark Knight, what are the 2 defining features? The first one is called Well of Darkness. As it's currently written, Well of Darkness is basically a limited resource you get. It works basically the same way Key does. You get 1 point for every level you have into the Dark Knight. But you get this ability at 2 called Burning Blood that allows you to burn a hit die, roll it, and regain that many Well of Darkness points up to your maximum at that level. Because you have a D10 for your hit die as a Dark Knight, after about level 4 or 5, you will effectively never run out of Will of Darkness points. It's a bonus action to regain them. You can just use them willy-nilly. So my suggestion is get rid of the Well of Darkness points completely and just use your hit dice as your resource. Use a system that's already there, and if you do that, it balances the class a lot better. So yeah. The other defining feature is called Dark Side. Dark Side is a bonus action. You basically can add additional damage to your melee weapon attacks. Starts out at a D6, goes up to a D12, and because it is additional damage that is dice-based, it means when you crit, the dark side damage will increase as well. It will double just like your weapon did a damage. So, yeah, so those are the defining features. Again, in 5th edition, your subclass should have something to do with one of those defining features, and either give you a new way to use it or maybe make it more powerful, something like that. That's what the class is based around. So if you don't have something that works in tandem or somehow works with it, you're going to have issues with the subclass. And that really is the problem of the Dark Magus. Effectively, the Dark Magus turns the Dark Knight into a spellcaster that uses Well of Darkness points to cast their spells. The Dark Knight isn't a spellcaster. Dark Side exclusively works with melee weaponed attacks. So by using your action to cast spells, you can't use your dark side at all. You've just taken one of the defining features. The only defining feature of the class that actually has an action attributed to it, as opposed to Well of Darkness, which is just a resource, and you've taken it away. That's not a great way to do that, and it basically means that the class features are going to fight against each other. The other thing about the Dark Magus, the Dark Magus is literally set up like the Elemental Monk. Like, it looks almost identical layout-wise to the Elemental Monk. They use a lot of this as the same wording. The Elemental Monk is the weakest monk class because the way it was designed, just the spells that you can cast are somewhat useful, but again, most of the monk's abilities are around it punching things, and if you're using your action to cast spells instead of punching things, you can't flurry of blows. You can't use a lot of the monk kit, and so it doesn't really work that way very well. However, one thing that the Dark Magus didn't do that the Elemental Monk did is the Elemental Monk had more than just spend 2 key points or spend 4 key points to cast this spell. It also had unique abilities that were built into it that actually does make it a playable class. It's just kind of a weaker subclass for Monk. This is literally every single thing that you choose is just you can spend so many Will of Darkness points to cast a spell. The way that it works is at 3rd level, you learn 2 Dark Arts, which is basically just 2 spells. And then at 6th, 11th, and 17th level, you learn another spell each. So grand total, you know 5 spells, and you learn the Toll the Dead cantrip. You also increase your maximum number of Will of Darkness points by a number equal to your Charisma modifier. So the Dark Magus actually gets more Will of Darkness points than any other class, which is kind of, again, pointless because Well of Darkness, again, after about 4 or 5, you're never running out of Well of Darkness points, even if you are casting crap tons of spells. So, yeah. I'm going to go through the different things here. But this is going to be a very, very different thing because this isn't split into the levels. This is all organized alphabetically, and it's just not great in general. So, yeah, there are some of these dark arts that you can get whenever. Some of them will actually have level requirements. Again, identical to the Elemental Monk, which, if you are creating subclasses, is not a bad thing to do. Look at what already exists and feel free to borrow from that. You don't want to make a carbon copy just for another class because, as we can see here, it's not going to work. But if it's already been designed, if a different kind of system has already been designed, feel free to use it. 5th edition itself, one of the things I like about it is every class is very, very different. And they designed a lot of different systems in order to make sure that those classes feel very different. So if you're going to be making a new subclass or a new class, looking at what is already there can be really, really useful. So anyway, let's talk about the stuff that you can do. So I'm just going to read down the list and tell you the things you can do. Abyssal Drain, which requires you to be 17th level. You can spend 6 Will of Darkness points to cast Contagion. Creeping Darkness, you spend 2 to cast the Darkness spell. Damning Curse, you spend 1 to cast Bane. Bane itself is actually a really useful spell that a lot of people don't think about. Another thing I forgot to mention, you can spend additional Will of Darkness points to cast the spells at a higher level if they can be. Like Bane, casting it at a higher level allows you to affect more targets with it. And the way Bane works is anytime they make an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check, they have to roll a d4 and subtract it. A lot of people undervalue it, and they shouldn't, because a plus or minus possibly 4 is a massive to change in whether they're going to hit or miss. Again, the highest armor class in the game is like a 25 or to 26. So for attack rolls, the maximum number you ever have to hit is going to be a 25 or to 26. So the range of numbers is not massive, and a +1 or a +2 is going to make a big difference no matter what. So yeah. So yeah, Damning Curse lets you cast Bane. Dark Dance lets you spend 2 points to cast Mirror Image. Dark Passage, which requires 11th level, allows you to cast Lightning Bolt, but it deals necrotic damage. Delirium lets you spend 2 points to cast Suggestion. Suggestion is another one that's really useful. You basically tell them a sentence or two, and they have to do everything. If they fail to save, they have to do everything they can to follow that task for, I believe it's up to 8 hours if you concentrated on it for the entire time. Now, as soon as they finish that task, they're not affected by this as a spell. So if you use Suggestion to say, drop your weapons, as soon as they drop their weapons, the Suggestion spell ends and they can pick them up again. But if you do something like, say, walk in that direction until you meet a man with 3 toes and give him all your money, that will force him to continue walking in a certain direction until they meet a certain person or the spell wears off in 8 hours. 8 hours of walking in the same direction is useful. So if you are using Suggestion, be sure to understand that you can give them suggestions of things that they cannot complete during combat and basically get rid of them until you're ready to deal with them. It's a great control spell if you use it effectively. So yeah, the next one is Edge of Shadow. You spend 2 Well of Darkness points to cast Shatter. Another one that's kind of useful. It's basically just thunder damage in an area. Flood of Darkness, which requires 17th level. You can spend 6 points to cast Negative Energy Flood. Helter Skelter, which requires 11th level, lets you cast Hypnotic Pattern. Hypnotic Pattern is another one that can be really useful. It incapacitates anyone that says, I think, that fails their save on it. I know earlier editions of Hypnotic Pattern, you would roll hit dice very similar to Sleep. And you could affect that many hit points of people. I don't have it open, but yeah, Hypnotic Pattern. Power Slash, which is requires 6th level. You can spend 3 points to cast Elemental Weapon. We've talked about Elemental Weapon before. Again, if you cast that on your weapon, you can combine that with your Dark Side damage to just do even more damage. So that one's actually kind of useful. Reprisal, you can spend 2 darkness points to cast Hellish Rebuke. Salted Earth, which requires 6th level. You can use 3 points to cast Hunger of Hadar, which is a Warlock spell, which is a really... Warlock spells in general are rough. Now, the thing that makes Warlock spells as powerful as that they are is you are always casting them at their maximum level that you can. This, you're not. You're going to cast... I think Hunger of Hadar is either 1st or 2nd level. So for 3 darkness points, or again, if you take my suggestion, that's 3 hit dice to cast Hunger of Hadar. That's not great. Scourge, you spend 1 Well of Darkness point to cast Hex. Shadow Skin, which requires 11th level, lets you spend 4 Will of Darkness points to cast Shadow of Moil, another Warlock spell. Shadow Wall, 17th level, you use 6 Well of Darkness points to cast Wall of Force. Siphon Touch, which requires 6th level, lets you spend 3 darkness points to cast Vampiric Touch. Vampiric Touch is another one that's really, really useful. The only limitation with Vampiric Touch is it is a melee spell attack, not a melee weapon attack, so it would not combine itself with your dark side ability, which would be which would take away a little bit of the usefulness of it. But Vampiric Touch, effectively, you as long as you concentrate on it, you can make melee spell attacks, and then you get some of the hit point damage you inflict as hit points back. So that can be really, really useful. Unleash, you can spend 1 Well of Darkness point to cast Arms of Hadar, which is another warlock spell that's just bonkers. And then Unmend, you can spend 1 Well of Darkness point to cast Magic Missile. So overall, again, this is just adding spells to the Dark Knight, but it does it very poorly. If you look at other classes, subclasses that add spells, again, this is almost identical to the Elemental Monk. The difference being the Elemental Monk. Really? Sorry, I was watching Mobile Suit Gundam. I don't know why it was playing because I had it paused, but whatever. What was I going to say? I'm going to open up D&D Beyond here. If you look at the Elemental Monk, and I'm actually going to bring it up here to make the comparison. Way of the 4 Elements Monk. They're elemental disciplines, which are basically the same thing as the dark arts. It's they're designed in the same way. There are some ones that require certain levels for you to do, and they effectively allow you to use key points to cast spells. However, there are quite a few elemental disciplines that are not just, hey, cast this spell. Things like Fangs of the Fire Snake. Basically, when you use the attack action, which is what you should be doing as a monk, you can spend a key point to cause tendrils of flames to stretch out from your fist and feet. Your reach with unarmed strikes is increased by 10 feet for that action, as well as the rest of the turn. And a hit with such attack deals fire damage, and you can burn another key point to deal additional fire damage anytime you hit with it. So, yeah, you can cast spells, which is nice. Giving them the option to cast spells is very useful. But if the only thing it does is give you the ability to cast spells and you always have to sacrifice your ability to use your defining features, that's not good. Things like Fang of the Fire Snake or the things like Fist of Unbroken Air, which isn't a spell but allows you to knock targets prone or push them away and deal extra damage and things like that. Shape the Flowing River is another one that just allows you to do something different that still allows you to do kind of monk things and be that control aspect that the monk excels at. Whereas the Dark Magus literally just lets you cast spells. And again, if we use the suggestion that I made where we get rid of Well of Darkness, that doesn't work for the Dark Magus because burning through 6 hit dice to cast Contagion. Contagion is a powerful spell, but burning 6 hit dice to do it is not a good trade-off, and it's never going to be a good trade-off. Dark Magus only works when effectively you never run out of your Well of Darkness points, because the Dark Magic is going to be going through them faster than any other class, and you don't get to do the thing that the Dark Knight is known for, which is using a big weapon to hit people. Your dark side ability is useless. It's just other than Which one was it? Other than Power Slash, which allows you to cast Elemental Weapon and then you can go back to attacking, none of these work in tandem with Dark Side, and that makes it pretty bad. What I would recommend, if you wanted to include the Dark Magus, well, I guess we can go final thoughts. The Dark Magus is just not a good subclass. It fights against the Dark Knight base abilities to the point where you effectively are playing two separate classes simultaneously. You have the Dark Knight and you have the Dark Magus. And every turn, you're going to have to choose: do I want to be a Dark Magus or do I want to be a Dark Knight? Because their abilities do not combine whatsoever, other than Power Slash. That's it. So, yeah, if you wanted to redesign this class, if you go to D&D Beyond, which I'm a huge fan of, and you actually go to the homebrew subclasses, and what I generally tend to do to make this easy, if you sort them by adds, the fourth one down, it's been added 3,000 times, is called Way of the Four Elements Remastered. And it is absolutely brilliant as far as how it changes the Way of the Four Elements and turns it into a much more useful class. At my table, if anyone wanted to play an Elemental Monk, I would tell them, listen, use Way of the Four Elements Remastered instead of the PHB one, because it changes how you use your key to cast the spells. It gives you a significantly larger number of elemental disciplines to be able to choose from, and a much more massive array of abilities that you can choose that just gel with the class better. If you want to make the Dark Magus and include it with this, I would highly recommend read over Way of the Four Elements Remastered and take some inspiration from that. Bare minimum, some of your dark arts need to somehow interact with your melee weapon attack, whether it's increasing your reach, whether it's giving them extra damage, whether it's allowing you to attack multiple targets with a single attack roll. Like there are a lot of different ways that you can give yourself dark arts that are going to actually work with the rest. Doesn't mean don't add spells at all. It means some of the dark arts need to be able to work with the dark side in order for this to actually gel with the base class. Otherwise, you need to make the Dark Magus as its own class, because it doesn't really fit. The other route you can go, if you'd prefer to go a little bit more along the lines of something like the Eldritch Knight. The Eldritch Knight is another subclass that adds magic to a weapon-based class. And the way that they do it is relatively early on. They give you the ability to make weapon attacks in addition to casting cantrips. And then when you get to high levels, you can cast leveled spells. And then also as I believe as a bonus action, if I remember correctly, you get to make a weapon attack, which is what the fighter is based around. Fighters are based around the idea that they get more attacks than any other class. That is their defining feature, is just getting tons and tons of attacks, and their action surge just gives them even more. So the other route you could go with the Dark Magus would be going a little bit more along the lines of the Eldritch Knight, where effectively turning it into a third caster kind of thing would work a lot better than trying to mimic the elemental monk and failing. Again, if you want to go this combination of spells and being a Dark Knight, I would either go the Eldritch Knight path and redesign the subclass to fit more along the lines of combining spells with attacks, or go the Way of the Four Elements Remastered by Deoxy is the name. Like I said, it's in D&D Beyond. It is free, so you don't have to pay for it or anything. Just go to D&D Beyond, go to collections, and go browse subclasses. Like I said, if you switch it to sort it by number of ads, it is the fourth one down. That is how popular this is. Look at it and take some inspiration from that, and design some dark art abilities that, again, combine the spell casting with things that allow you to make melee weapon attacks. You can use your dark side ability. The other thing you can do is there is no hard and fast rule that every single class has to have 3 subclasses. Even in the PHB, there are 3 classes that only have 2 subclasses. The Ranger, the Druid, and the Sorcerer only have 2 subclasses in the PHB, and they're very, very, very different subclasses. I would almost say for the Dark Knights, you don't even need the Dark Magus if you don't want to spend the time it would take to redesign it into something that's workable. It's doable, but it will take a lot of work, basically starting from scratch for the Dark Magus. And if you don't want to go that route, the Black Blood and the Abyss Knight are still really, really good subclasses. And having the Dark Knight only have 2 subclasses is perfectly fine. It would fit with a theme. Both of those fit with a theme. The Dark Magus doesn't make a ton of sense anyway. Lore-wise, if you look at Final Fantasy XIV, Dark Knights don't have spellcasting abilities at all. All of their stuff, other than Unmend, which is an ability they have that's basically used to pull mobs at lower levels, and then at higher levels you really don't use it a ton. Because plunge is just so much more useful. That is the only real, quote, spell attack that Dark Knights get in Final Fantasy XIV. So, yeah. It's a valiant effort, but it doesn't work the way it's designed. And this would be one subclass that I would just flat out say I wouldn't allow at my table, because it's just not... you're going to feel... less powerful than other classes playing this, because it fights against each other. So yeah, sorry that this isn't quite as glowing as the other ones, but again, not every single class needs to have 3 subclasses in its base form. And you can always add subclasses on later on. They've been doing that constantly with the D&D. I do it with my class. I added a 4th subclass later on. It's perfectly fine. So anyway, that is all for me today. As always, again, like, subscribe, and turn notifications on in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on this? Do you like the idea of a Dark Knight that casts his spells? Or are you kind of like me? Do you think that these 2 ideas just don't really gel? Especially since you already have things like the Black Mage is a class we will eventually cover. The Summoner can have that kind of a little darker aspect to its spell casting. Like, you don't really need a darkness based spellcaster. Yeah. So again, let me know, what are your thoughts? Do you think I'm being a little too hard on this? Do you like the idea of a Dark Knight spellcaster? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.